Welcome back to the channel. The full season is underway, and let's talk about the Celtic Rangers game. Now, when we sat here in the studio last season and talked about where Celtic Rangers were at, there was a lot of times that me and Paul were saying that Rodgers wasn't working and the style of play wasn't good, and it was really the players weren't taking to it. And I'm happy to sit here right now and admit that we got that. We may have Brendan Rodgers might well be proving us wrong here, because one thing we did say through it all was that he's a really good coach and he can get good good performances out of players. But I think that the transition for a lot of Celtic's players from Adams to Rodgers there was a bit of an adjustment period, and if there was ever a chance for Rangers to win the title, it probably would have been last season in that kind of spell where Celtic weren't looking too good. But I don't know about you, Paul. I think the Celtic players look as if they've taken confidence from getting over the line last season, and there's this feel of let's now forget about Ange Postecoglou. We're all in on Brendan Rodgers, and let's go to the next level. And we've seen that from pre-season. I know you can't take too much from pre-season, but what you can take is the first 4 games, no goals conceded, 4 comfortable wins. Can't ask for much better than that, and a very, for Celtic standards, a very good, respectable transfer window as well.
Yeah, I mean, the tail end of last season, I think the last 3 months were pretty standard for a Rodgers team. I think start of last season, it wasn't good enough. I think it seems to have looked like that he was struggling maybe to get his message across to some of these guys that were playing under Ange, but I mean, could we have asked for a better start to the season? No. Even like you're saying at pre-season, I know that you can... I think looking at the results of pre-seasons can be silly, but the performances have they've been right high. So even against Chelsea, Man City in these games, okay, we were only playing a full-strength Chelsea or Man City team, but these clubs have got pretty impressive B teams, guys that we would probably be looking to take on loan. And we played them both off the park in pre-season. So coming into the season, I was really optimistic. The first 4 games, just like, do I need to say anything else? Like, we haven't conceded a goal. We haven't even looked like conceding a goal. Kasper Schmeichel's like got his pipe and slippers on, playing in Scotland. I mean, we'll talk about the signings, because I personally think that we've upgraded in the goalkeeping department, which I didn't think that we were going to even be able to do. But for 30 minutes on Sunday, we were electric. Every time we touched the ball, we went forward. They looked like they didn't know what to do with us. Every time we went forward, we looked like we could score. So we've seen glimpses of this last season against Atletico Madrid. There was like halves of football last year where you were like, we're looking pretty good, but there was no consistency. So far, the consistency's been absolutely bang on. So so far it's been kind of perfect.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be that much desire to have that consistency domestically. It seemed like every time we had a European game, we stepped up that gear. And I remember you saying a couple of times in the podcast, how can we play like that against Atletico Madrid and then draw against Dundee or something like that? And I think that, Rodgers is somebody that through it, in the last season, he seemed to be getting his back up a bit about the way the press was talking about him and the way the fans were talking about him. And one thing you've got to say is really impressive is we didn't make the signings we needed to make until late on in the window. And what he's done in the pre-season and the time that he's had, it has gotten the absolute best he could out of the players he has. And we've started the season off really well. Because you could argue that the first couple of league games, you're looking at the team going, why we're not at the position of strength that we should be. But because of his level of coaching, he's been able to get the players fit and well drilled and ready to go right from the start, which is, you've got to give him and the coaching staff a lot of credit for that.
Definitely. I think what's got to be worrying about, or if I was a Rangers fan outside of Sunday, because there's a lot for them to worry about for Sunday, and we'll get into that. We don't need more players to dominate domestically, it would seem. We're 4 games in. We've had, Schmeichel, one new signing in the team, and it's been perfect. So, like you're saying, it would seem that he's starting to get a tune out of the squad that he inherited. Plus, I mean, Nicholas Kuhn has been an absolute revelation this season. We signed him last year. This is kind of what we hoped for. There's chat that he had toothache, like chronic tooth problems, and blah, 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 right? But he's come out this season and he's looked absolutely amazing. I mean, him and Maida are just looking... I mean, honestly, like, I think the word electric is just the best way to put it. I mean, the ball that Kuhn played to Alistair Johnson for our first goal, or technically a second if you look at the state of that VAR decision, but that first goal and the amount of times that Kuhn just went out to the byline and hit a sort of curved ball round the back of their left back into Alistair Johnson, you're like, this guy's looking fucking great. And I mean, we didn't even miss Matt O'Reilly. I thought we actually looked better on Sunday. That's the best we've looked all season, and apparently our best player's just been sold like 2 or 3 days before. So I mean, nothing but positives, really, was it?
Absolutely. And let's go into the game, because I believe there's one particular reason why we didn't miss Matt O'Reilly, and his name is Bernardo. Bernardo really seemed like he was ready to step up and show everybody that he can fill Matt O'Reilly's boots, and I thought he dominated the middle of the park all throughout the game. I was, I'll be honest, the first 10 minutes I thought we looked very shaky. It seemed like Rangers were pressing high. They had some good intent, but it felt to me as though the minute that we broke through their press, even though the goal was offside, it seemed like the Rangers team were like, "Oh no, we can't press them like that." But more importantly, I feel like the Celtic team, although the goal was offside, took confidence from the fact that they carved Rangers completely open from our own box to putting it into the net, pretty much. And it was, when you watch that go back, it was a great team goal from start to finish. And I think the Celtic team were like, we can cut this team open from that point on. And I think that we showed a ruthlessness that we didn't quite have last season.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, we have watched enough football to know anyone saying that the league is a foregone conclusion is just ridiculous, right? I'm like, because there's so many things that could happen. You look at last season, there was points where I was sitting here on this podcast saying that Rangers were going to win the league. I genuinely believed that we looked all over the shot and they looked consistent, and I thought that we were in big trouble. We got over the line, and not that convincing a fashion, if we're being totally honest about it. And I think that there was a lot of Celtic fans, including myself and you, that were a bit unsure about what Rodgers was going to do or whether he was going to take the team. But they really came back firing. In this game, I think the gulf between the two teams was quite evident. And I think as much as you can talk about the players, the Clermont and the difference between Clermont and Rodgers seems quite significant. And the way that they approached the game, they didn't seem to know how to cope with Celtic. Like, before the game, Celtic come into what we had 3 games, 3 clean sheets, 3 convincing wins, and it didn't seem like the Rangers had any plan to address any of Celtic's actual threats.
I mean, I think you're spot on. The first 10 minutes, like, I think what actually, I've watched the game, so I watched the game live and then I've watched it back again because it was so good. I watched the first half again, right? So I was like, right, okay. What it looked like happened was they pushed their front three. Now, I'm not too sure who the front three are. So there's Dessers,
Tierney and Matondo.
Yes, right. So they pushed them right in top.
I only know that because I'm obsessed, obviously.
Right. Well, no, nothing wrong with that, right? So yeah, they pushed A3 right in top of your back four, and it was causing our back four problems for the first 10 minutes. They also put Diamande right on Callum McGregor. That's 4 of 11 players out of the game, just like you said, as soon as we get past that front line. So as soon as the ball comes to Kuhn, Bernardo, Hatate, and listen to these names that we're saying, how they're playmakers, Maida and then Kyogo dropping into the midfield. There's an overload everywhere because they've got 4 players out of the game, 3 pressing the back 4 and 1 on that pivot, which is Callum McGregor. Now, I think what we figured out was just don't give the ball to McGregor, just give the ball to Bernardo, and Bernardo was everywhere. It looked like Rodgers dropped Bernardo sort of narrower towards McGregor so that Diamonde was almost like, who do I pick up here? Because now I've got that. And then over your shoulder, you've got Hatate. And then you've got Alistair Johnston and Greg Taylor sort of inverting in. So there was just so much overload as soon as we get past that press. And just like you said, I think they went, we can't press this team like that, because the gap between the three at the front, the midfield three and the back four, see if you go back and watch, for about 9 minutes on, you're like, look at the space that they're giving these guys, and there's only so long that you can give players like Hatate, McGregor and Bernardo that amount of space before they're just going to ultimately punish you. I thought the goal was onside. I thought it looked onside. I don't know what's going on with the lines. People are saying they're squinting and all that.
Look, what I'm going to say about this is I'm not interested in starting any conspiracy or anything like that, but what I will say is it has been already said by, I don't know, I can't remember exactly, but by officials that the lines can be manually changed in a way. And you're looking at that and I'm going, I don't see, right, I'm not even talking from a Celtic perspective. See if you just look at it as objectively as you possibly can. I don't see where he's offside. I can't see where he's offside. They show you one line for about 5 seconds and that's it. And I'm sorry, but it was very suspect. And you can't help but think Andrew Dallas and VAR and John Beaton, you know what I mean, these things. But see, at the end of the day, I'll take a quote from Jock Stein, if you're good enough, the referee doesn't matter.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
And we showed that on Sunday.
Yeah, we need to be better than the officiating, and we did that. I mean, it could have been 5, 6. We could have went in 4, 5 up at half time. Yeah. So here's the big worry. We had like 30 million quid of players sitting on that bench that have been there for less than like 3 days. If we bed them into that team, what domestically, I just don't see anybody coming anywhere near us. And actually feeling, I wouldn't say optimistic, right? But I would say quietly excited about the potential of what we could do in Europe with a squad of players and with a style of play, because we were absolutely rock solid at the back as well, which last season, guys, Scales was so good.
It was excellent. It was absolutely excellent. And you can't help but feel that he's somebody that is growing more and more, because I think there's this narrative that he needs replaced. And I think last season he did have shaky spells where you thought, I don't know if he's going to be quite, the guy we need to get to that next level, but you can't fault the way that he's improving, and he didn't put a foot wrong in the game. There was a couple of times where they were breaking away, and he was just as clinical in the tackles as Vickers is. And so I think because his name's Liam Scales and he's Irish, people think, we need to replace him. There's this idea that how can he be good enough to be Celtic's centre back for Europe?
We've got a bad, I think, Christoph, there's only a couple of players that come to mind, but Christoph Ayer is one of the very few players that we've bought, been like, he's not good enough, put out on loan, and he's come back and been a success. I think that the Celtic support are quite fickle, and once they make their mind up about somebody, it takes a lot, such as almost a perfect start to a season for them, over 4 games, and in a Celtic Rangers game, for them to go, maybe Scales is good enough for us. I think he is good enough for us. I think him and Carter Vickers have formed a good partnership. But the good news is we've signed Carter Vickers' American partner in the American national team for a lot of money. So it's going to be very interesting to see the weeks and months and actually see how Rodgers, what it looks like, because he's got a right headache in the middle of the park. We signed McCowan and we signed Engels. Now, McCowan looks to me like a signing that ticks a couple of boxes, like he's homegrown, so it's good for Champions League and blah, 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 right? So I don't know if necessarily he's been bought with the eye of he's going to start games. But Engels is a record signing at 11 million quid, so you've got to imagine that Rodgers is thinking he's going to be my starting 11. But if Pablo Bernardo plays the way he did on Sunday, I wouldn't be happy with him getting dropped simply because of a price tag. He was everywhere. See, for the first hour, it was honestly, you were like, it was the Pablo Bernardo show. You were like, well, how is he getting here or there? Like, what the fuck? And other than he's missing the first half, I thought he had a perfect hour. And Rodgers is saying that he's not quite match fit, X, Y, and Z. So maybe more to come for him. So, and Greg Taylor's performance was almost, I feel like, at another level for him on Sunday. So maybe the fact that we've bought in a left back, we've bought in Scales, we've brought in a centre back, we've brought in competition in the middle of the park is going to drive these guys on, which can only mean good things for us as Celtic supporters.
And I want to dive more into the transfer window and what we've done business wise. I think we can maybe do that in a separate video. But talking about the way when you said about Bernardo being coming out the team for our new signing there, I actually think part of when Rodgers looks at a team long term, it feels to me that it's more likely that he'll come in for a Tati than Bernardo, just simply because I don't know if Rodgers. I just get this feeling that Rodgers, he obviously rates him, right? But I don't know if he rates him as highly as Adams did or the Celtic support does, if that makes sense in terms of his fitness and stuff like that. Because there has been question marks over Tati's fitness. He's obviously been great so far this season, but I think long term you might see Tati be the one that's more in and out than Bernardo, just from a fitness point of view.
You might be right.
But especially if Bernardo, if he plays like that, you can't drop him. But what we've done to the squad, it was a near enough perfect transfer window. And the only thing that I felt was lacking was just that other winger. If we could just got one other winger, I felt like a Jota on loan or that guy from America. I was really excited about the link to the guy from America. But what was interesting to me is we were linked with several players for 8, 9, 10 million. This kind of value, and it really felt as though there was a different approach of we're going to go out and buy quality. Yes, it took time, but how many times have we sat here and instead of going, we got it done just in time, we'll sit and say, oh, we've just missed out on them. So the fact that we've went and bought somebody for 11 million seems to me that Rodgers' message of we need to go and buy these players is getting through to the board, because he's been here before. He's been through the rigmarole of trying to get the Celtic board to spend money before, and maybe now they're at a point where the message is finally getting received, because Celtic signing any player for £11 million is a big statement for the way that we're looking to approach the club. Like you say, we didn't need him for domestic, but we needed him for Europe, and that to me shows an intent to want to try and do something more in Europe. Those are the kind of signings you need if you're going to make an impact. And with the draw we've got now in the Champions League, it's the most favourable draw we've had for a number of years. And with the new format, you've got to think, if we can get to European football after Christmas, I would expect Celtic to then go into January and push on even further, buy that winger and see how far we can push on. Because it seems like for the first time ever, we're sitting here saying, oh, we just missed out. Instead of saying we just missed out on them, we're saying we got them in.
Yeah.
And we got them in. When you look at the key areas, we need a left back, we needed a centre back, we need a midfield player, we need 2 midfield players. Do you know, we need a striker. And we got all those things done. The only thing that was missing for me was just that one other option on the wing. Because I think if Mida or Kuhn were to be missing from the team, I think the drop from them to like a Palmer or a Forest is pretty significant.
I agree. I mean, I'm not so pessimistic about the right hand side, because James Forrest had an amazing couple of months at the end of last season, and made it to the Euro squad, and there's a lot. I think James Forrest is better than what the Celtic fans have seen of him for the under Ange, for instance. Like he seems to play well for Rodgers and in Rodgers' system. So on that right hand side, but on that left hand side, I think Lewis Palmer's no fancied. I don't know if I fancy him, to be perfectly honest. So
he's a good line guy, but what do you mean?
But no, I just on that, I like you're saying, if Dyson Maeda or it gets injured, that left hand side looks like a weak link. But other than that, like you're saying, almost perfect transfer window. It sounds like Celtic have had a change. Well, I mean, we're in the player trading model, which is you buy. What it's been of recent is we try and buy cheap-ish, so that sort of anywhere between 3 and 5 million, and we try and then sell on at a profit. And I think Rodgers has been open to say that he wants the club to be a wee bit more ambitious and move more into the market that, say, like Ajax, Benfica trade in, which is buying players between the 5 and 15 million quid bracket and then sell them on for like a 20, 25, 30 million quid. Because if you look at last season, we bought Lagerbielke, we brought in centre-backs, it didn't work. So buying in that market, I don't think that market's really quite as lucrative as what it used to be. If we go back to, say, Victor Wanyama, like that sort of like era, because it felt to me like we hadn't really moved on from that era. We were still trying to trade in that, find gems in Israel, find gems in Africa, and I think Ange kind of shifted that, and luckily we found a few gems in Asia, but now Rodgers, I think, is letting them know that he wants to trade in that sort of maybe bottom half Premier League, being able to buy a player for the Premier League and then improve them and shift them on. But I'm with you. We get 2 goalkeepers, we got a left back, we've got an international centre half, an attacking midfielder. Pablo Bernardo Ida signed up, broke our transfer record twice in the one transfer window. I don't think we could have asked for any more. If I was nitpicking, I would have liked to get these guys in 2 weeks ago. But we don't.
I think Rodgers would like that.
Aye, but we don't live in an ideal world, do we? You know?
But the thing is as well, is I think this is the first time in a long time where there's genuine reason to be optimistic about what's happening with Celtic off the pitch. So I think in previous seasons it's been like, well, we'll just focus on the fact we get a good team on the pitch because the Celtic board are the way the Celtic board are. But it's moves like that where you go, that was a different approach. That's the first time that we've really done that. We've replaced a guy that we bought for 1.5 million with a guy for 11 million, which is a significant jump in guys in the market. And I think the reason why that approach that you just described that doesn't work as much anymore is because of the inflation in the market. Like you can't really get quality players for 2 million quid these days. It's just because the money is just so big everywhere.
It's crazy, mate. Chelsea spent £1 billion.
Birmingham City like one, buying guys for 15 million quid.
But Chelsea spent $1 billion over the course of like an 18-month period and won nothing. And that's scary, that's like scary money. So you're right, like it just felt like like I was saying earlier, I'll repeat myself, it felt like the board hadn't moved on. And I feel like Rodgers has kind of forced them to move on, and I'm happy about it. He's almost like hit the reset button on his opinion, like my opinion of him, where I'm like, right, I'm sort of back, and I'm back like loving him,
I feel like last season there was this negative feeling about him and the club, and now I feel like I'm back to being a Rodgers guy. I feel like I'm back to being behind him. The fans feel behind him because we've got the players in, and it feels like he's a key part of that. And it also feels like by getting those players in, there's a chance that he'll maybe stay a bit longer than he has before. Do you know what I mean? Where he may have a reason to not back a couple of teams if they come in for him because we're buying the players he wants. So all that stuff is really important for the long-term future.
100%. I would be very, very surprised if he doesn't see out his contract, if he doesn't see out the 5 years or what. I think was that a 5-year deal that he got.
Are you saying that Brendan's here for 10 in a row, mate? Is that
maybe not quite, but I think after what happened the last time, I genuinely think he would need to get sacked. I don't think he's going to go. Now I could be wrong because he's very good at being that kind of politician, right? But he seems intent to want to create some sort of legacy long term here because he's left and went to Leicester, didn't work out, and I think he's maybe a guy that's realising that the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Look at Ange.
Well, exactly, and the only thing I think would entice Rodgers is the top level, top clubs. And if we're being honest, I don't see him getting that. I don't see him getting those offers anymore because of what happened at Leicester, and because as much as he did a good job at Liverpool, he didn't quite get it done, did he? So I think he knows where he's at, and that he might be here for the long term. And so if he's here for the long term, he wants to he doesn't want to be the manager that wins trebles but gets knocked out of the Champions League every year. Do you know what I mean? So there seems to be a different level of intent for the club. And if you are, so let's talk about how you would feel from the Rangers perspective.
I was just going to say, let's move on to Rangers. I mean, that guy has drank the Kool-Aid at Ibrox hook, line and sinker, like the delusion. And Philippe Clement now seen it last season. I think a bit it started to come out. They celebrated a draw. I think that the euphoria of scoring a last minute equaliser after conceding a last minute winner, which was almost a winner for Adam Ida. The euphoria that sort of kept them from going, we just celebrated a draw at home. Now, if I was a Rangers fan, there's a couple of things that would really worry me. They celebrated a cup win against St Johnstone at Hampden. They went in front of their fans and done like a huddle and jumped. Like, that's tin pot. They are now in the realms of just being an absolute jokey club. Like, it's getting silly. To focus on the game at the weekend, he's coming out. I mean, he's hitting it with stats. The level of delusion's absolutely gobsmacked. To watch that first half, to look at how Celtic took their foot off the gas and allowed them to play in front of them, pass the ball backwards and forwards, and then to hit out with possession stats is absolutely wild to me. If I was a Rangers supporter, I would be so angry. I was watching it with a guy, we know Matt, a mutual friend, like we know Matt, and I said to him, if he starts by saying we played well, we should have been 1 or 2 up, and then if he mentions money, I was like, mate, I'm going to fucking piss myself laughing, because none of our new signings played. Pablo Bernardo, you could, right, okay, and Schmeichel, but none of the big money signings were on the park. So if he was to come out, hit out with stats or possession or whatever, and he came out and he just ticked in Matt was pure, you called that like half an hour ago. I was like, because I'll tell you why I called it. I used to be a manager in a business, and see when you're not doing well, you start to find bullshit. You look for positives when there's none there. Now, I genuinely, if I was a Rangers fan, I would have wanted Clement to come out and go, it was not good enough. Do you know?
Yeah.
But instead, he tried to make out like it was a tight game. I mean, the media guys like Graham Souness aren't doing him any favours by kind of like towing the same line and going, the gap isn't that big. Anybody that knows anything about football that watched the game after the split at Celtic Park, to a lesser extent the cup final, could see that there's a golfing class in the two teams. I'm not a football manager and I can see it, so how can they not see it? Exactly.
And I really feel like the longer you don't face the reality of that, the bigger the gap's going to become, because I'm listening to it, and from a Celtic point of view, I'm going, that's great. See, the more that you think that this is good, because the honest truth of the matter is that was 3 going on 5, 6, 7, and it probably should have been. And actually, I think it benefits Celtic that it was only 3, because there's this idea of, oh well, if Dessers scores this, and
he was offside.
I know, both times he was offside.
They had 2 other shots on target that he was quoting in these 2 chances about we should have been 1 or 2 up. They were both offside, Philippe. Like, you need to work in reality, because like you're saying there, the more that you do that, the worse it becomes. Like, toxic positivity is toxic, and you can see the toxicity that's happening now. The fans are down at the stadium calling that, like, face to face with their club captain, a guy that's
responding to it as well.
Guy that's been there all the way through the banter years, and saying you're a loser. Like, it's a loser of a club. This is what I would say, and I'm not saying that to have a dig at Rangers, but they have won nothing in the last 10, 15 years. So why do they have this entitlement? And see the amount of times, like, I watched TalkSport with Souness, right? And I love these clips, because see the amount of times that it goes, when Rangers were on top in the 90s, we're in 2024, Graham, 30 years ago, mate, get over it, and he's cheated. So let's stop with this delusion about Walter Smith and the great Rangers teams of the past. Like, it's just nonsense. It isn't the reality anymore. So the longer that you stay in that sort of like, we're going for 56 and blah, 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 like, it just goes against anything that you can achieve, because the pressure is so high for this team at Ibrox to be the number 1 most successful team in the world and blah, blah, whatever titles that they want to make up for themselves, it just puts iron hot pressure on every player that goes to that team they're nowhere near us. And instead of going, we're nowhere near it, how do we improve? They're somehow trying to delude and make their fans believe that they are near us. And what we've witnessed in the last 48 hours is the pennies dropped. That, oh fuck, we're nowhere near it. Not one of the players would get in our starting 11. And I'm struggling to remember a time that's true the other way, where Celtic always had a couple of players, whether it be Paul McStay or John Collins, that would get into the Rangers team. Now it's nobody, so we're light years ahead of them. I don't even think any of their starting 11 would have made our bench on Sunday.
No, and do you know what the reality is? If I was to speak, to try and look at it from a passionate Rangers fan's point of view, I would say all of this is from complete mismanagement off the back. Like the way that they have overspent. Even after going to Division 3 and getting back up, they're spending £1 million in Division 3 for people. You know what I mean? It's like, why they overspent, and they had. How could it be possible that Rangers come from Division 3 to back to Premiership and have a higher wage bill than us? Do you know what I mean? Like, that is complete and utter mismanagement of these players. And James Tavernier has been your captain for 10 years now. Like that is, but it's because of the fact that when you look at Celtic, Rodgers is talking about the board and he's saying the board are working on it, the board are doing this. But with Rangers, it seems like they're trying to plug gaps anywhere they can and get by season on season, and the cracks are really starting to fall through when you look at what they've done with Ibrox and the mismanagement of that whole shambles of not having that ready for the start of the season. And then you're selling people like Golson and all these players and the idea is you want to replace them with better players. But in reality, I look at players like Golson, Lundstrom, even players like Fabio Silva and all that, and I go, they're not that much worse than what they have on the park right now, if not even better. Do you know what I mean? You're playing a right back at centre midfield with guys with Demonde playing a higher up role when he's basically a defensive midfield player. So you're playing guys completely out of position because of what Rangers fans are saying on Twitter, basically. Do you know what I mean? So it's like there's no real. When Ange Postecoglou first came into Celtic and we were a total mess and we lost the first couple of games, all you heard from him was, we need to raise the standards. We can't feel sorry for ourselves. We need to focus on the here and now and make sure that we're getting the most out of these players right now. He wasn't coming out and going, oh, it's because we haven't signed these players and because of this and that and we had more possession. The first few games with Ange Postecoglou, he was ruthless. And the reason why Celtic bounced back so quickly from Rangers winning the league that season is because of the standards he came in and set. Philippe Clement had the chance to set these standards, but he's coming out and he's just trying to protect his own arse. That's what he's doing.
I mean, the guy's got a 4-year deal, so I think he'll be laughing all the way to the bank if they need to sack him, like protecting himself. I feel like he's a weirdo. Like, see when you need a leader, that guy needs to be relatable. Yeah, he needs to be like realistic. He needs to. You need your squad and your team need to have confidence in his vision. That's it. He needs to be a man. The dude's posting fucking assisted dips on TikTok. Like, you're a fucking late 40-year-old man. Like, get a grip of yourself. Like, you're supposed to be the manager of one of the biggest clubs on the planet, and you're putting shitty wee work out of it. It just it sort of encapsulates him. Yeah. And for what you were saying there, I can't the word that you used, ruthless. Like, if you protect a player like James Tavernier, right? You refuse. I think there's something about it where I'm like, I get what he's trying to do. He's refusing to throw his players under the bus, right? But you can also say that, without throwing any individuals under the bus, that the collective wasn't good enough and that it needs to be better, without fluffing with stats coming out. Like, quick, give me some stats so that I've got something to say in this post-match interview. Like, what injustice happened during this game? How can we have a victim mentality here? But I genuinely, like, see when you... I'm trying not to insult him, but I don't feel like he's a leader. And I don't feel like it looks like his squad are going out there and giving everything for him. And if he's going to put his neck on the line the way that he does by looking like a fucking idiot in the press, by going out and protecting people, I would be having conversations with these guys saying, if you do not give me 100%, I will play reserve players and you will be in that fucking B team, because I'm going out there, I'm getting absolutely terrorised in the press. I'm refusing to throw yous under the bus, and yous are going out there and giving me 75%, and I would be absolutely tone boz. Now, why he's playing a guy in Tavernier that clearly does not want to be there, why hasn't he stripped him of the captaincy, just shows a lack of backbone to me. It shows a lack of any form of, like, I hate to say it, I don't know another word to say it, but like being a man about it and taking Tavernier aside and going, you don't want to be here, I don't want you here. Like, you can train with the first team, blah, 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 but you're not my captain. Give the captaincy to Butland or give it to whoever the fuck you want to give it to. Give it to Dessers. He looks like the only guy in the park that actually gives a fuck about what's going on. Do you know what I mean? And as much as, like, having a go at the fans in a Champions League quarter, but he looks like at least the guy cares.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So many of the players just looked like they did not care and only going out there. There's maybe... the wee guy Connor Barron looked like he ran about a lot. You know, he busted a gut. Like, but Philippe Clement to me just looks like a dead man walking. And see, for being honest, he's been like this since he came in. It's kind of been, you know what I mean? And can you imagine a Celtic manager just get beat 3-0 at Ibrox, but we won 6-0 last week against a Ross County team that get put out of the League Cup off of Spartans FC 2 weeks before?
No, it's just so like you'd be absolutely fuming, right? And see, right from the start of the season, anyone watching Rangers, you could see like Tavernier. I just watched Tavernier. I thought he's done. He is done. Do you know? He just didn't want to be. He did, like you said, he doesn't want to be there. And there's one thing, if you know you're not going to be that success, like if you know that Celtic have the better team and all this kind of stuff, but I think fans can accept that partially if they know there's a vision, if they know there's a guy they can get behind. Like, for example, when, like I said, not to harp on about it, but when Ange first came in, I don't think there was a Celtic fan on the planet that realistically thought we were going to win the league that season. And the way that the team was and the way that...
Yeah, I 100% agree. We sat in this room and I turned around and said to you, we're winning nothing, right? But I liked Ange.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Because he had a clear identity. We just didn't. We were playing like Ralston and, you know, nothing against Tony Ralston. I love him. Like, he's a good squad player, but we were relying on guys that weren't where we want to be and weren't capable of playing the game that Ange wanted. But you could see what he was trying to do. And also, when he signed Kyogo, you're like, okay, he's got an eye for a player. He knows. And then when we signed Hatate, you know, the momentum started.
But but to get to the point where you could sign Hatate and be still in the race, people forget the first 6 months of the season, we had no depth and we had to fight like fuck every game. Do you know what I mean? Like, there was a lot of games in the first half of this first season where we won. We get 90th minute winners and, you know, 90th minute draws. You know, kept ourselves in the race, and I think if you're a Rangers fan, the quality is obvious, but that isn't. I don't think that's the main gripe, because of course there's going to be a gap there with the way the teams have been managed recently, but it's more the lack of desire from these players that have been there, and also, if we're being honest, a tactical ineptness from Clement. Yeah. Because you're looking at the way you're talking about how in that game there, Roger sees, he can see their game plan. He knows that McGregor is getting marked out of the game. So before the game, he's obviously planned for that idea instead of Bernardo you tucking in a bit more. And then all of a sudden, we can cut them open. But Clement's watching that, sees that, and he doesn't have a response to it. Do you know what I mean? Because if you're a player, right, and you can see the goal that's offside, you know, we cut them open, we score the goal. But that midfield then have got to go, right, see for the next 10 minutes, let's tuck in and get tight and close. You know what I mean? Like, don't press them as much, but let's just get tight and do a low block for the next 15, 20 minutes. Keep the game 0-0 for as long as we can. You know what I mean? And the problem is, I think there's players in that team that are coming out feeling like they're equal to Celtic because they're Rangers players. They're not coming out like Ross County to Celtic Park. We need to fight here, and I think that's the issue. Is that there's this when Rangers fans and when Rangers media constantly talk about Rangers as, you know, on a par with Celtic in terms of the way the clubs are, you know, just in terms of everything, because we've always been quite close together. I think there's this narrative and belief in some of these Rangers players that want to go to Celtic Park and go toe to toe with us. But it's just not going to. It doesn't work.
You're totally right, man. It's like a college basketball team being like, we're as good as the Chicago Bulls. Like, come on, let's go. You're gonna get fucking humped. Like, you're just gonna get embarrassed, and you're not even just. I mean, like you're saying there, the lack of fight, the lack of desire. It's the arrogance, and I think it's just ripping right at them, and I don't think it's doing them any good to be unrealistic. You need to know where you are, and you need to have an idea of where you're going, and they look like a club that are just treading water, hoping that this is a cycle, that they're going to win another league or something's going to happen. It just seems like that will get there, but you won't, because we had 100 million quid in the bank before we went into this transfer window. We just let's forget the amount of money that we spent on players. We've come out £10 million better off, and we've got the biggest Champions League pot that any team in Scottish history has ever had, because we're playing 8 games, and we've got a draw that looks like we might be able to get into the playoffs. It doesn't get any better for the financial aspect of Celtic, and it cannot get any worse for Rangers, because I think if it gets any worse, it's I would hate to say, but I think it would be like lights out for them, you know.
Well, and you can see that as well when you looked at the Champions League qualifiers and Hampden was half empty, you know, things like that. Because for all you could say about Rangers in the past, they've always filled out their stadiums, man. So there's a disconnect, and the gap. The more they don't look at the reality of the situation, the bigger the gap will get, which is only going to favour Celtic. And see, if you were to compare and contrast to a team like Aberdeen, for example, had a bad couple of seasons, they've brought in a manager who has clearly come in with an exact idea of what he wants to do, how he wants to play, and the players have bought into it very quickly. 4 wins out of 4. When was the last time Aberdeen won 4 wins out of 4 in the start of a league campaign? Do you know what I mean? Scoring last minute winners and all that away from home. So I think the pressure from Clement comes from the fact that he's not getting a tune at the players he's got. So there's every sort of dynamic that you could look at, they're failing with. And like I say, you're wanting a manager that can come in and be like, right, if you look at Rangers watching play, what is the style of play? Are they playing it from the back? Are they going long? Or are they just kind of passing the ball around their own half and start paddling? Because it was almost like you're watching the game and there were so many times where they did that in their own box for about 10-15 minutes, where they just passed it round the back to each other. And you're thinking, are they almost like doing that as players to try and look like they have some control of this game? You know, like, it's almost like the players know that after the game they're going to need to. It needs to look close so that they can feed this delusion of where Rangers are and what they are. But the truth of the matter is, like you say, the 90s was a long time ago, and they need to get to grips with it. But the longer it stays this way, the more happy times for us. So I don't really mind, you know what I mean? It's like, it's the end of the day.
Agreed, mate. Agreed.
But just to kind of touch briefly on, like I say, Aberdeen, they look very impressive under this new manager. And I think it goes to show, like when we've talked about in the podcast before about teams like employing, like, you know, players out of like loyalty, like Barry Robson, like Hibs going with, was his Gray or something? Is that his name is? Andy.
Aye.
And then you've got Hearts with Stephen Naismith. like there's this idea of because they know the club, they'll be great managers and all that. But then you bring a guy who doesn't have a clue who Aberdeen is, but he obviously is an experienced, good coach, and he's come in with a good tactical awareness and an ability to get a tune out of a group of players. And so all of a sudden they get 4 minutes out of 4 and they look like they could be a right force in the league. I think with no European football as well, there's no reason why they can't completely focus on the league. And, you know, I know people have said about going, you know, Rangers being a battle for second. I don't believe that to really be the case, because we always say stuff like this. But what I will say is, the more that Rangers look up to Celtic and try to chase us and ignore that, and the more Aberdeen are focused on game by game, you never know, man, if it keeps going this way.
Could be a battle for second place.
It could be, and it's not. So, because if you were to look at it at the face of it, I'm looking at the Aberdeen getting that last minute winner against Ross County, and I go, do Rangers have that ability to get a last minute winner against these teams?
I think Ross County gave a real, as far as I'm aware, they gave a real good account of themselves. But with the Aberdeen thing, let's wait until they've played. You know, they play Rangers, they play us, they play Hearts, they play these teams. Ross County get beat 6-0 at Hampden the week before, and again get beat off Spartans in the League Cup. So, but apparently they played really well, and Aberdeen played really well, and it was a good game. And Kevin Nisbet popped up. That's why they've brought him.
They've made some really good signings.
They've made some really good signings.
The keeper arguably looks like he could be one of the best in the league as well.
Yeah, so I can't wait for our game against Aberdeen. But this is a difference, isn't it? Is that this time last season, and we'll wrap on this because it's nearly 50 minutes that we've been chatting about football, but last season, if Aberdeen had won 4 out of 4 at the same point, we'd be like, oh fuck, God, we need to go to Pittodrie. Do you know what I mean? And we would be like, the way we are playing. But this year I'm like, no man, I can't wait to play Aberdeen. Like I can't wait for us to pull away for the pack and ultimately hope that Rangers get dragged into like a sort of battle for second place. And the way that they're playing and on their current form, I wouldn't be surprised if they finish 3rd or 4th. I really wouldn't. So they better, like you're saying, as long as they keep watching our arses pull away for them, they're going to forget what's coming over their shoulder, and they're going to really need to have a look at that. So I'll be looking forward to the Aberdeen Rangers games, which have always got a bit of bite to them anyway, but like them coming to Parkhead, which I think happens in a few weeks. It's
definitely, from a Celtic point of view, a very exciting season ahead, and also one of those things where the first time in a long time I'm not going into Europe going, oh man, it's going to be, I mean, look, it'll be tough regardless, but there's reasons to have optimism. We've brought in a lot of good quality, and we're looking, you know, we're looking shit hot, man. So it's like I say, you know, it's been a fun start to the season. There's a lot more to talk about, and it's been a while since we've done a podcast, as you may all be aware. I've had some things going on with the football team I coach and things like that have taken me away, but we are here and we are set to put out content weekly going forward. Football podcasts, one-to-one interviews, and we want to go forward every Tuesday putting out content. So I just want to let everyone know that we are fully back up and running, and we'll be back next Tuesday with our first podcast guest of 2020. Well, I'm saying that as if it feels like a new year to me, because I've not been doing the podcast, so it feels like a bit of a fresh start in my head, because I've been doing a lot of work to kind of get my head back in the zone for the platform and make this all it can be. So we're going to be back with Sean Chalmers, the comedian, next week, and what was one of the most probably like impactful, relatable podcasts that we've ever done. We've done it quite a few months ago, but I'm really looking forward for people to hear Sean's story and how much he's came through in his life, and also how funny he is as well. So please stay tuned for that and more football podcasts. Let us know what you think. Where do you think Celtic are? How can Celtic make an impact in Europe this season? What can Rangers do to improve and push on as well? What are your opinions on the game? Let us know. Comment below. And we'll be back every Tuesday going forward. So stay tuned, and thanks for watching.